Hey folks, welcome back to the Pop Culture SquadCast. Hoping everybody can see me out there. I'm kind of by myself for a little bit. Um, our guest has just shown up in the green room, so hopefully he can hear me and wave at me or something like that. And we're gonna get to him pretty shortly because Mike's not going to be with us tonight. I apologize for that. I want to I wanted to talk to him about a bunch of different things that we're gonna get to. And we will do that. We will do that soon enough, probably on the next time. So, I want to remind everybody that this Saturday is Free Comic Book Day. So, get out to your local comic book shop and see what's there. Remember that when you go there, the free comic books that the shops have, they are not free to them. They're free to us, free to the visitors, and you know patronize your store. See if you can find something. There's usually a bunch of really good deals that'll help you out, help them out. So make sure you do that. That's this Saturday. Also, another programming note, really quick. Mike and I were at Ithacon last weekend, and in 2 weeks we're going to be at CradleCon in Garden City, Long Island. So keep an eye out for that. I don't want to take too long because we do have our guest here, and I want to. People probably would like to hear other people talk rather than me, but our guest tonight is the Steve Orlando of comics. And Steve's a friend of mine, and I have enjoyed every conversation we've had together. To give everyone an idea of who Steve is, he is a critically acclaimed comic book writer, and he's been amazingly prolific over the past 15 years. It has been 15 years, and he's probably regretting me saying that, but it's about that time. And it's over the past 12, he's been like amazingly prolific with such good quality comic books. He's had his work published by DC, Marvel Comics, Image, Aftershock, IDW, Boom, TKO, Dynamite, and some others. He's currently writing Scarlet Witch and Marauders for Marvel, and his creator-owned book Bulls of Beacon Hill, which is here, is about to finish up the first arc at Aftershock. I hope it's only the first arc. We'll have a lot to talk about because he's got a ton of things in the pipeline, and we want to get into that. So before I continue talking, and yeah, Iceman. We're gonna get to Iceman. We're definitely gonna talk about Iceman. Let's bring Steve in. Hey, can you hear me?
I can, man. I don't know if I forgot it or whatever. I was overjoyed with the intro music you gave me.
Isn't it great? It's fun. It's free. It's part of Adobe, so I like it. It works well. It's a little come into the show.
Very Larry Davidian.
Um,
Pretty.
exactly. So how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, well, I'm very good. Welcome to my living room at our
I'm enjoying it. It looks good.
very similar to my living room at my old place,
Yeah.
except the megalodon is in a different area.
Yeah. Well, this one's yours, so that's even better.
Yes, and all of the associated costs, as you know.
Well, yes.
But it's been good. No, we're doing good, man. Busy as always, as you said in the intro. 15 years. I'm interested as to your math there, but I'll take it.
2009.
What did I do in 2009?
2009 is something Image.
Oh,
The first
Outlaw
Image.
Territory. You know what?
Yep.
You're right. I wrote that in 2008, and I totally obviously forgot when it came out. But you are correct.
Yeah. Well, it's according to Wikipedia, so you never know how true that is. By the way, what's up with the picture there? It's not your are you upset about it? Or are you okay with this picture?
Wait, did someone make it something stupid? Hold on.
It's new. It's not the one. It's not one of your favorites.
Oh no, this one is fine.
Okay.
And it's such an ordeal getting things changed on Wikipedia, despite really being the person in question, does not make what you say valid. This isn't just about me. So I'm happy with that picture. I
Okay.
haven't not had a beard in like 4 years, but it's better than the previous photo, which was my first ever DC press photo that legitimately made me curl up and die inside when I saw it. So I look like I'm about to sell you some fucking health and like life insurance. It was terrible.
This one's fine.
So
This one's good.
yeah, no, the current one is fine.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna bring in. I'm just gonna bring in another picture because see, the thing is, I'm disappointed, that Mike wasn't able to be here because what I was going to talk about, and I'm gonna do it anyway, is this is the last time you and Mike were together,
Oh God, 26.
which is you're in there. Look, this right back here. I don't know if you can
Oh,
see
I
Mike.
know, I'm in there. I'm
You're
behind.
in there. Mike's in there. John's in there. Everyone's in there.
He's got-
That was the DC party for the Suicide Squad premiere.
It sure was.
Well, besides that, let's talk about some other things. And let's talk about right now what you're writing. And I want to talk about some of those things. And then we're going to get into what's going to be coming out. Because every time I look, there's more and more and more. But we've kind of talked about this. But Scarlet Witch, absolutely loving that story. I'm so glad it's been extended. Could you talk about Darcy and how she came into the story? Because the way I was interested to see her there, and you and I have talked about this, but I'd like you to share, like, how did she come into the story, and how has it unfolded for you? In
Oh,
terms of your expectations.
Darcy or the book or both?
D- Both, sure, but I'm interested in how you feel about the character that you're using there.
I mean, so the thing about Darcy is it was a happy moment of synchronicity or kismet, whatever buzzword you want to call it. Scarlet Witch went through many revisions. That shouldn't be like a surprise for anyone who is keyed into comics and any of our anxieties we post on social media. Many books go through many revisions. So the thing that happened here is, in one of them, I was talking to the editors, Alana Smith, Caitlin Lynchvet, who are both great, and we realized we'd created this new character that was going to be Wanda's. Well, she wouldn't say sidekick; she'd say apprentice, but sidekick. And
Assistant.
and and upon writing the first issue, I was writing this character, and we all sort of realized at the same time that I was already kind of writing Darcy. I was already, because the thing is like Kat Dennings and I have a very similar sense of humor. We have a very similar delivery. We both kind of sound sarcastic even when we're not being sarcastic. So in
Sure.
creating this new character who originally had a different name, we sort of realized that we were already kind of delivering the type of interactions you would have between Darcy and Wanda, Kat Dennings and Wanda, especially the comic version of Wanda, who's a little different than the movie version. So it became one of those moments where we saw an added opportunity there to sync up with folks who knew Wanda from movies and television, and to also give some added auspices to this character that was debuting in the comic. And every little bit helps with the book. As you said, we were extended past 5, and in comics these days, you got to hit big early and often, right? So with Darcy, it gave us one more nugget to reveal to people and get people in the door. And it was, as I said, I mean, we all realized at the same time we were already kind of using that character, even though it was with a different name. So she became Darcy, and it all has worked out very smoothly. Like, as to how I feel about how she's been in the book. Tomorrow folks will find out the whole story with her and what got her through the last door. It's fortuitous that Scarlet Witch 5 comes out tomorrow, with the last page that I'm very excited for people to see. And Darcy has been, I think, a great balance, in the same way that she works in the MCU. Comics are totally different. We have to be bigger, stranger, and deliver more than movies and television. Otherwise, why are you buying the comics? But that actually makes Darcy even more perfect, because her role is to give this grounding, humanistic, and often sarcastic perspective to things that folks in the world of comic books often, and I mean the world of comic books, often take for granted as mundane, when they're still absurd, strange, and fantastic. I mean, Wanda acts like she's an everyday person, but as she often will dryly recount herself, her life has been wild. It's been buck wild, especially so even among other characters in Marvel. So having someone like Darcy there, to take the mick out of her sometimes, and also to comment on the moment, I think has been a boon, because that's us. She's our POV character, when it comes to the strangeness. Wanda's
Yeah.
our POV character when it comes to our personal struggles. But Darcy's our character that says, you just pulled a snake out of like a magic goat's ass. Like, this isn't normal.
Right. Your sister is the mistress of magnetism, and your brother is a super speedster, and that's just normal to you, right?
And I think, and it allows some levity. I think a lot of times with magic books in general, this isn't just about Marvel. You can get lost in the lore, and it can be very like high fantasy, like Wands of Watum and all that shit. And so it's nice to have Darcy there calling Polaris She-Hulk and calling Artemis Ass-Kiss, and reminding us that this is still a world that real people with real reactions live in. I think it's been a boon.
Yeah, I agree. I think you've done a fantastic job with her. Really, radiating that type of sarcasm and absurdity at the same time.
She's funny in a different way from Wanda. We realized early on, and you've seen it in the book, like, it's not that Wanda's not funny, it's that she's kind of just figuring out humor. We kind of decided that in a way, and only in a way, obviously, because it's different, but we were looking at how, like, Liam Neeson famously has no sense of humor, but in having no sense of humor can be funny.
Right.
And so the thing about Wanda is she's just trying things out. You never really know if she's joking. Like in the first issue, she makes that crack about sending Dr. Hydro to the New Jersey DMV forever. And everyone says, "Oh, is that a joke?" And she just says, "You'll never know." Like that's
right.
That's the Wanda delivery, but it's counterpointed by Darcy, who's quippier, but she's also real. I mean, and it just, there's things that you could never get out of a character like Wanda. We got away with, "I fought Thanos." Oh, I don't know her. But Darcy can, and that goes on and on. But then in the same way, like, her reactions also ground her own actions. She can speak more bluntly about what she's done. Like in issue 4 with Scythia / Hippolyta. She can lend a relatable gravitas to the happenings, because she can just say, "Holy shit, Hippolyta," and like Wanda's never going to say "holy shit."
Right.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
So it's been an asset to have her there, and I'm excited to provided she survives the next issue.
Hopefully, I'm hoping.
It's been really, really fun, and like her and her interactions with people, it's just it livens them up. And it gives, she's in the annual. I will say that. I won't reveal where that lands. But having her and Agatha together has been really, really fun as well.
Yeah. I can't say enough about how excited I am about that series. How well you guys have put it together. It's been a revelation. It's something that it's a book that I didn't expect it to be. It is. It's funny. It is very funny. But it's very much a Scarlet Witch book. For fans of the Scarlet Witch, you should be loving it. It's good. It's really great. I want to move off of that a little bit to Bulls of Beacon Hill, which is going to end this month. Is it done this month? Is that?
It is. We are done this month. We planned it as a miniseries, so it's not like anything changed. But I think it's pretty well known that Aftershock is going through a period of transition right now.
Sure.
But we did plan it to be a mini from the outset. Could we come back? Absolutely. But I would love to come back to a series at Aftershock someday. But that being said, in the current market, you can't plan for that. You got to give everything you got, and then find more. If you do come back.
And you're finding more, and we're going to get to that. Bulls of Beacon Hill, though. I've said this to you before, and I've said it publicly. And I don't mean that this is not a knock in any way, or it shouldn't. I don't know how. It's just something I feel that it is the most Steve Orlando voiced comic book that I've read.
Because everybody's really vulgar and they talk about fucking and murdering each other.
Well, there's a lot of that too, but that's not. But it's. I hear you. I can hear you in it, and it's really good. I don't mean to for that to be a negative in any way, because it's very, very. It's a great story.
It's not a negative that it's good. I can.
I know that, but the voice part of it, like it's a great story. It's intense. It's engaging, and Where did that story? What inspired this story for you? For those who
Oh,
don't know, it's very quick. Just overhead. It's a crime political thriller type situation that happens in Boston. But you go ahead and tell me whatever you want to say
yeah.
about that.
I mean, I'm happy to talk about it. I mean, this was very directly inspired by an article that I read, actually taking place out of Italy, where a similar setup to what happens in the book happens, but with a mafioso and his surgeon son, who is who is also queer, and out of embarrassment, this mafioso put a hit on his son,
Wow.
and this is a real thing that happened in Italy. And so I saw it. And I mean, I love the guys at Aftershock. We have done many books together, so we're at a point where we just gave them a call and said, "Look, read this. I think there's a book in it. Like, and if you think so too, I'll get to work rebuilding it as a comic." And they did. So we took that core idea and transplanted that to where I had recently moved, which is Boston. I don't, at this point that was like 4 or 5 years ago now. But the idea was to take that core story, but then also put it somewhere else where we could say even more. Despite being Italian, I've never been to Italy. That's not really the place I can depict as well as I could. Somewhere that I'm living and that I know the area, especially a couple of years in. So we wanted to turn that in a new setting, but take that core thematics of this father, super like full of machismo, that is to the extent that he's going to kill his own son rather than be connected to him. I mean, that's raw, and you could write about that forever. Moving to Boston was an added bonus, though, because this is a city that has a history of violence. It has a history of corruption. We've all seen The Departed, and we all love the accents.
Mhm.
And but beyond that, it's also a very it's stuck. There's a perception that Boston is liberal, and it is in many ways, and it's accepting in many ways, but it's also at war with itself over those things, and there is an entrenched hostility towards marginalized folks here as well. So that's was enjoyable for me to write about too, because it's easy to say, oh, it's a bastion, it's a haven. Well, not for everybody, and this is our way to remind people that every place has its tarnishes and its bruises, and that's what makes them interesting and also makes them fallible and real.
It's interesting because there's a bit of a theme in some of your work in familial relationships around queer characters, and I don't mean that in. If you look at Crude, it's kind of the opposite a little bit in the father son relationship. Um, if you look at Dead Kings, is another situation where there's a familial, straight character versus queer character in the same family and how they're dealing with it. And you've explored it in a bunch of different ways. So one of the things I was kind of thinking about, and I'd like you to kind of talk about this, because I know it's something that is important to you. You were featured in a story about 8 years ago by The Advocate, and it's a 40 under 40 category, right? Do you remember that?
Yeah, and I'm still under 40, so hey, there's time for me.
I know, I understand, but we don't need to talk about that anyway. But the headline was Steve Orlando isn't waiting for gay characters; he's creating them. And you've worked with and created characters all across the gender and sexuality spectrum. But do you feel a responsibility to write queer characters because they're queer? Like, what is your approach to writing a queer character?
Well, the approach for me is to not repeat myself. So, and it's not that I feel a responsibility to depict the world as we see it, and
Mm-hmm.
there's obviously a thirst from the audience for us to write about our own quote unquote lived experiences. So it it combines with that, and then I do want to, I do write a different type of queer book than other people, and that's not to denigrate the work of my peers.
Of course not.
We just have different interests. I
One of the things, if I may,
sure.
one of the things I know you said, I forget the exact word you said, but one of the things I was just thinking that you kind of write queer character, write the world as it is, and I think that's something that I notice in how you try to. It's not the world we want or the world that we aspire to. You're kind of very real about the world that we is and how that we live in and how people interact in that.
I mean, I try to be, but to me, that's real representation. That doesn't just talk about queer people.
Right.
Like,
Sure.
we any type of inclusivity in a story, like, people deserve to be well-rounded and they deserve to have dimensions and be fallible. And that's one of the real, if I'm gonna jump on my soapbox and ride that bitch,
Go
like,
ahead.
the thing is like, you need to have more representation and more appearances in these stories so the characters can be allowed to be imperfect and characters don't have to carry the entire weight of community on their back. When I
Right.
wrote, I mean, and again, like, everybody comes into these things differently. My first major book was Midnighter, not my first queer work. I mean, there was queer characters going all the way back, I think, to my Outlaw Territory work, but definitely in Undertow, which I did in 2014.
Hmm.
Um, but that being said, I mean, from the gate, Midnighter was not a model gay, right? He's a murder obsessed serial killer
Sure.
who tries to direct that on the side of good when he can, and usually succeeds because his force of will is quite strong. But he's not a role model in some ways he is, in some ways he isn't. But that was the initial complexity. He's a role model in that he knows exactly who he is and will not compromise it for anybody. And he's not a role model in that who he is a guy who enjoys ultraviolence, and
Right.
wanton murder. So from day one, I was writing these characters that certainly were not, as the internet taught me the phrase, perfect cinnamon rolls. Um, I don't like dessert, so I had to learn that on Tumblr. But and I don't like dessert because we've gone out. But
Hmm.
so that's always, I mean, to me, that's the value, right? Because here's the thing, like, if you're doing these stories, you're writing them. At least when I'm writing them, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but yes, I'm writing them for the queer demographic to feel seen and validated and all those things. But I'm not going to lie, like, I want them to be enjoyable to everybody because that's how you build bridges. I'm not only writing for, at least in many cases, I'm not only writing for queer people. I want to depict queer folks and all kinds of folks in as multi-layered and realistic ways as possible, because that's how, maybe someone has never met a queer person before, but they read a book that I wrote or one of my peers wrote, and it just connects to them that way. And they say, oh, these people are people. And that feels like an obvious thing, but very clearly, if you look at the world, that's above the heads of many folks. And sometimes it's just because you've never been confronted with them. So I want them to be something everybody enjoys. Of course, the priority is to write, when doing this type of work, is to be authentic to the queer experience. But I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't. Also, I want crossover readership because I want folks to see us as people and realize that we're just, I mean, in the sense of our personhood, we're just like them. Like, the way we live our lives may be different. It often is. But at the same time, we are imperfect. We have goals. We have loves, desires, failures, triumphs, all the things that anyone else has, even if the window dressing looks different. And broadly speaking, that's the goal. But that's the goal of every work, I think, because you're just trying to talk to as many people as possible. The medium might be different. Mine is usually sex and violence. Maybe there's some heart in there.
There's
I
plenty of heart in
I
there.
did write Wonder Woman, and that she kills zero people throughout my entire run. But maybe that's why I enjoyed Artemis too. But no, like, I think that's the goal, and it's not like, I like the things that I respond to are when queer characters have the privilege, basically, of not being perfect. Like, I love the other two on HBO right now because the lead, one of the leads, the character's name is Carrie, is I mean, the show is extremely confident with his life as a gay man, but also because there's more queer characters in the show, Carrie gets to be a piece of shit. He's career
Sure.
obsessed. He uses other people. He's desperate to get ahead. He's jealous. All these things that people are allowed to be, but
Right.
sometimes we don't get allowed to be because there's only one of us in the corner in a story.
Sure, and that's the problem. I agree. The problem is, that there's only one person. That person has to be perfect. Otherwise, people who don't know will assume, and like that's a terrible way to write from. I agree. Um, I want to. I kind of want to talk about process. Then we'll get into some of the stories that you're writing. But when you do you fight with the story? Does this some is there when you come up with a pitch, minus corporate meddling, how much is fully formed? And to follow on that, like, what was the most difficult story that you worked on from a writing perspective? if you can share that.
Well, you say mine is corporate meddling. I wouldn't call it meddling, but they are two different things. When you do a licensed book in any way, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's like Power Rangers or fucking Transformers or any of that shit, or of course Marvel and DC.
Right.
Um, I can only talk about my own perspective, but like our job is, I mean, like we are delivering a product, we are selling our ideas to a company. So I don't think it's unreasonable for them as the customer to have a couple guidelines for what they want. Of course, it can go overboard, but within reason, I think having a couple guideposts for what we're looking for can be helpful.
Sure. Sure.
If you want to talk about process, like the Scarlet Witch book, take that for example. I'm not there. There were like
How
maybe
did that come out? Did they say, hey, we want you to pitch a Scarlet Witch book, or did you say I want to do Scarlet Witch? How does that work for you
Well, I
right
mean,
now?
I can only, I mean, there are people for whom it works totally differently, but they did reach out to me about doing Scarlet Witch after Darkhold came out, and I'd actually been putting it together since then. But yeah, when they did, they said, okay, we're looking for X, Y, and Z, and otherwise, like, tell us what you would do, but make sure you do X, Y, and Z. And those things
Sure.
are pretty broad, right? And some of it is just about perspective and how we tell the story. I find it helpful to have those things because, as all of my peers love to say, like nothing is more intimidating than a blank page. And in a way, when you have a couple mandates that are reasonable, which, unreasonable would, for example, would be like, you can do the X-Men, but no mutants can appear, which has almost happened to me in an analogous book at a different company. But reasonable is like, we want you to do a Wanda book and we want her to move to a small town to change her perspective. Okay, like that's super, super broad. And that was involved in Scarlet Witch. And you can take it and run, and you can build around that. You have your first block, basically. And so I find that helpful. And that also means you're talking about process. When I'm doing an original, I have to make those things up for myself. But I still have to take the time to pick out the guideposts of what absolutely has to happen. And then I can build around that.
Do you regret your guideposts at times?
No, because at the same time, like,
Because Steve's a good guy, right?
no, Steve's an asshole. But if you're undisciplined on original, you can also just cast the guidepost aside. But I try not to because I like being disciplined. I like having a framework, and I think that everybody can. And also the thing is that you, in some ways, you have to be even more disciplined on originals if there's no editorial involved, because everybody can be edited. There's not with a good editor, of course, but like there's not a creator out there that doesn't need to be edited or at least driven away from the rare time when they may be given to their worst impulses or things like that. Like it's a benefit. I mean, I value that. So you have to be, unless you're, successful enough to hire an editor for your originals, which I am not, you have to be that for yourself. So you got to actually be extra hard on yourself in originals, because otherwise I'm going to fuck off and they're going to sit on a table this entire issue. No one's going to say no,
Right.
but unless you're a master like John Hickman, you probably can't pull off 20 pages of people just sitting at a table and talking. Now, he did it in Secret Warriors, but that was after like 20 issues of build-up.
All right, I want to talk about something new. And hang on a second. Let me. I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to bring this in, and you're going to tell me about all of this. This comes out tomorrow.
Everything? You want to know everything that happens?
It's weekly. Is this weekly?
Yeah, it is weekly.
First of all, I'm very excited for you because I know how much this character means to you. So you're going to be doing Spider-Man 29 Dark Genesis. What is this? What is this story about, and how did it come about for you?
I'm going to be real about Spider-Man 2099 Dark Genesis. It is Maximum Carnage 2099. Because we knew that from almost the outset, because we wanted to come back to Miguel and do more after 2099 Exodus. And again, the thing we knew he had to do was introduce a 2099 version of Carnage. So knowing we were going to do that, I was like, yeah, let's go wild. And let's also tell a story set specifically in Nueva York, because the story in Exodus was broad. We were off planet. We were all over the world dealing with something on a global scale. We wanted to, in a way, dial it back to just Nueva York, although, it's a mega city, so Nueva York is like DC to Boston. But at the same time, that kind of makes the stakes feel more real because we're grounded in one place. So it is basically it's one bad night in Nueva York, 5 issues weekly, and it's Maximum Carnage 2099. The thing about Carnage 2099 is he's medical science gone wrong. The Carnage cells were supposed to hypothetically be programmable, basically smart blood that could go in and they could say like only consume cancer cells, for example, or only consume the ichor that turns you into a vampire if you have vampirism. Unfortunately, they were too ravenous, and the project ended up getting shut down. And what you get is Carnage 2099 once he's unleashed, and he quite literally needs to kill to survive. His heart burns blood in the way that a car would burn gasoline. So he has to keep chugging up other people's blood and burning it. The red on his body is quite literally congealed blood. If he hasn't fed, his body would just be like burnt black bone. So he's got to kill a lot of people pretty much constantly, and that, as you might imagine, brings him into conflict with 2099 heroes, new and old, not just Spider-Man, the newly introduced Spider-Woman, Venom 2099, who first appeared under Jodie Hauser in Nick Spencer's 2099 event, Punisher 2099, a debuting Blade 2099, a re-debuting Daredevil 2099. I'm probably forgetting people, but there's a lot in there for fans new and old.
That's awesome. That's great. I somehow had missed this. It had flown under my radar. And I'm very excited for you for that.
I mean, I'll tell you, Blade 2099 is my new favorite character because the conceit is actually so simple. I'm very excited about it. I mean, he's raised by the original Blade, and his origin is nearly the same, except that he's half zombie. So where the original Blade has the thirst, he has the hunger. And where the original Blade has to drink his blood serum, Blade 2099 has to 3D print human meat rather than eating actual people to stop himself from giving into the hunger.
How do you 3D print human meat?
It's 70 years in the future.
It's 2099. Right, we're good. Yeah,
we're like a year away from printing chicken breast, my man.
All right. I want to talk about. I'll go back to process a little bit. You mentioned we've talked about that you had a mentor coming up and someone you continue to have a relationship. How does that prepare you? How does establishing a relationship with a particular person where there's trust, where there's honesty, where there's mutual desire for success? How does that work? How do you feel that impacted your career so far?
I think that, so for folks who don't know, yes, like Steve Siegel and Joe Kelly from Mad Action Studios taught me how to write comics, especially Steve Siegel. I've known them since I was about 12. And there are many advantages. I mean, it's not like we talk all the time now. We're
Sure.
like Steve is a dad now. He lives on the other side of the country from me. I actually haven't seen him since 2019. Thanks, coronavirus. But what the year, I mean, being brought up by him, it toughens you, and especially in the case of, it depends who and how your mentor is.
Sure.
But Siegel has always been very honest with me, aggressively honest, and honestly, from the time I was a kid, treated me like a working pro. And so people often, well, that makes me sound like a douchebag. People have remarked at my work ethic. And if I have one, it's because from the time I was 12, the first thing Siegel said to me is, if you want this to be your job, treat it like one, write every day, or it'll never be your job. And I'll see you in 6 months with a new comic, or I won't. Bye, kid. And and he, had said that to hundreds of people, but I came back every 6 months for 18 years. And so I was lucky as well that he knew how to motivate me. We are very similar. My friend that works my booths with me at shows refers to Siegel as my work dad because we have nearly identical responses to things, even when it comes down to our gestures. And I've also been known to not beat it around the bush and be pretty blunt about things, but never hurtful, just honest. And that is how Siegel was, I mean, I would go to him with work. You want to talk about trust, like you have to find someone that you trust has your best interest at heart and respects you, even if they're saying things you don't want to hear, right? Like nobody wants to hear that their work is unpublishable. Nobody. But I heard it 2 times a year for almost 20 years. And then when it wasn't, you have someone that actually makes good on their word. From the time I was 12 years old, Steve said, when I had work that was publishable, he would make it happen. And sure enough, fast forward 18 years later, 19 years later, I have the pitch for Undertow. He says, oh, this is ready to go. What do you want to do with it? And I said, I'd love to publish an image. And he physically put it in Eric Stevenson's hand. So there's a perfect storm of someone who was a good personality fit for me. Like, I don't need to hear, and as he, as I was often told, like he wasn't there to tell me what was great about my work. That's what my mom's for. He's there to tell me what needs to get better. And not aggressively so. Like, it wasn't about putting himself over, but it would be, this isn't professional level. Here's why. This isn't. Here's why. Here's how these things need to change. And it worked for me. Other people need different styles. They might need a little softer touch, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But I don't. Sure. As a matter of fact, that doesn't work on me. And for folks who are trying to get in, just to be clear, I probably called him 2 to 3 times a year, every year during those 18 years, saying I was going to quit. I was never going to happen, and I was just going to be done trying. And what worked for me is that every time I called, Siegel would let me complain about how I had done my comics and I was entitled to a job, and he would say, "No, you're not. No one's entitled to a job in entertainment," which is true. And then he would say, "Well, it sounds like you think it's hard. If it's hard, you could just quit." And that would enrage me so much that I was good to go for another 6 months.
Again, the perfect storm. Like, he's perfect. He was the perfect person for you.
For me, and everybody may be different, but it's good to have someone on your side that can teach you the ropes, and also that knows that the ropes change. Like when we talk now, it's as peers. There's not a lot that I think I'm safe saying there's not a lot that Steve needs to teach me about the comic business now. But he's also not in the comic business now. Now he's crushing animation. For folks that don't know, the reason you don't see the Men of Action guys in comics that much is because they created Ben 10, and they're just floating around like in a space yacht, basically, because of that. So, so now he has more to teach me, but it's not in comics, and that's okay. But as we talk about this business, it's more as peers. Not to say we don't still talk. Of course we do.
Sure. Let's switch to something new. One of the cool parts for me, and I'm this is gonna make me sound like a douche, but one of the cool parts is having friends like you who I learn about things kind of a little bit before other people. And so it's been a few months that I had heard about this. So let's talk about it.
What do you mean? You definitely didn't hear about that earlier.
I have no idea. I don't know. Something about it was.
Bob,
you were going to do something cool.
Whatever you knew is between you and your Ouija board for legal reasons.
Of course, I have no idea what you're talking about.
For the record, though, I have been telling people my next project was really cool for like 6 months, and I thought someone would I was harping on that for me, and not a single person, man.
All right, what are we going to do? Listen, I am, for those who don't know me, I am Bob. And so when I was a little kid, my best friend and I, we would play Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And I was, of course, Iceman. So what are we doing with Bobby?
Well, the funny thing about this is that it's almost impossible to talk about the book because so much of Fall of X depends on the next Hellfire Gala.
Yeah. So that's true. But also, isn't the beginning of the fall, the road to the fall, going to start happening before the gala? Like, there's something coming out.
So I do have a Mutant First Strike, which is
what is up with that?
So Mutant First Strike, look, it's a disaster relief book. It is a rescue book that's based around not just what the Marauders have been about, but what I myself physically did when I was working disaster relief with my friend Jose Andres in Panama City, Florida, after Hurricane Michael. It's the mutant version of that, So there is a big attack that is perpetrated in the issue, and it's about Krakoa coming in to do all they can. As Bishop says, if they as mutants can do more, then they should do more. And the reasons around that will be revealed in the book. But it's my take on mutant disaster relief, and it also ties together everything you've seen going on in the X-Men office, not just in my books, but specifically my books, X-Men Green. Giant size X-Men Thunderbird, of course, Marauders, everything has its part to play, along with other things going on in the X-Men office in First Strike, because mutants have been doing a lot of big, bold moves, and at the same time, Orcus does have a head of narrative and a head of propaganda, and big, bold moves are easy to manipulate and reframe in big, bold ways. So that's a factor to the book as well. And regarding Iceman, I'm trying to think. Here's the thing. I will say the Hellfire Gale is huge for all the Fall of X books, but we do know Bobby's going to be in Antarctica. He's going to have a new stronghold he's built in the coldest, most remote part of Antarctica. Well, the most remote part of the coldest place on the planet. That's what I'm trying to say. And he will have someone there that is unrevealed with him.
Okay.
But it will be Bobby getting nitty-gritty, fighting a guerrilla war against Orcus, and leaping out into the world for moments of heroism, before he falls apart for reasons that will be explained in the Hellfire Gala. But until then, he will also be doing the biggest, boldest Iceman power set stuff that you've seen in a long time.
That is fantastic. I'm very excited.
I will say that I've dropped a lot of visually. I'm doing a lot of how John Cassidy would show things freezing with Elijah Snow and Planetary, which hasn't really been the way Bobby does it. So that's exciting to me. You know, like usually he'll blast something and it freezes, but I've always liked the Elijah Snow.
Where I love. It's one of my favorite characters. Absolutely.
Suddenly ice, you know, and it's just so there'll be some stuff with that, and also the fact that he doesn't really need a singular physical body or things like that anymore. So he'll be exploring the breadth of his abilities for sure.
Am I right in that Bobby was the first person classified as Omega level? I think the first time the term was ever used was referring to him.
It's going to be real with you. I have no idea who was.
That's
first.
Fine. That's fine. The only reason I even say that.
Yeah, absolutely. But that could be. I know there was a big. I remember late 90s, there was that big moment where Emma Frost took over his body and revealed to him that there was so much more he could do than he was doing.
I think it was even before that. I think it was back in Louise's X Factor. I think that was the first use of the word Omega level was in Louise's X Factor or something like that.
Your word is law here.
It is not. Okay. It is not. I'm just guessing. So...
But anyway. He will, and I will say, what else can I say? Vincenzo Caruto, amazing interior art, like shades of Pepe Larraz going on. And then I worked with Jesus Saiz on covers. To be honest with you, it was like a career highlight for me. I love Jesus. We've never worked together. And so to have 5 covers by him, super, super exciting. It's like almost Boris Vallejo type stuff.
Yeah, and it's gorgeous.
As I said,
I'm looking over here because I'm just staring at it. It's freaking beautiful.
That's just it's bucket list stuff, man. I'm so happy to have him on, and I've seen the covers to 2 and 3 as well. 3 does have a Star Spangled guest star, and
interesting.
And I'm very excited for that. And the other cool thing about Iceman that I'll say thematically is that it's been this isn't really a spoiler, but Orcus is making big moves. That's not really a shock to anyone. And one of the things that you want to talk about things that I write about in the world as it is versus maybe other people. The thing is organizations like Orcus hate organizations. They love the applause. They love the kudos from their crowd. And to do that, they have to scapegoat people. And one of the things about Iceman is that once this big move happens, and I can't really talk about that, it becomes apparent to other people in the Marvel universe, and Iceman included, that eventually they're going to run out of mutants, and when that happens, they're going to need new people to scapegoat. It's not these types of people never end with one group.
Sure.
And so one of the things that I've been excited about with Iceman thematically is that we get to explore just the wealth of characters that in comics history have tried to do the superhero version of appropriating mutant culture. They want the superpowers. They want, take a look at the U-Men, the Y-Men, the experience users, the Korean artificial mutants. All these people are trying to be a mutant, but only the good parts. And the interesting thing about Orcus and where they are at is that now these people are getting the whole mutant experience, which is they're suddenly being persecuted too. And it allows us to really talk about something that has always been there, but no one's really cast that light on these people that gank mutant powers before, or basically have done it for clout. So I'm very excited about that. And the perspective of other characters in the book. I mean, people sign up with Bobby because they're from different groups and they know, like it's not just only going to be mutants. And to say more would be to spoil other cast members. But suffice to say, people that are from any type of other groups where you just simply are different, they know that the hammer is going to fall on them too eventually if something isn't done. And that might seem obvious, but it's a perspective you don't often see. You see these people that they're only after mutants or they're only after something else. And I'm really happy that we got that in the book because that is real. These people, these types of folks never just stop at one thing.
So I kind of want to touch on something you said without being spoilery. And it kind of, Robert's trying to be funny. So I don't know if you even get that joke.
It's not only do I not get it, Robert, I don't know how I was going to say it. Not only do I get it, but Iceman's accounting already works into a book that I've written that is going to be coming out within the next 3 months. So not only do I know, but yeah, whatever, fuck it. It's in First Strike. He uses his accounting things in First Strike.
Well, that's cool. But I want to kind of follow down that road a little bit. The fact you kind of mentioned that people, do you take into account the fact that Bobby is a character in the X-Men? He's a mutant who has been on teams with non-mutants. Like he's got that history. I don't know if that's even relative now, but like he was in Champions, he was in Defenders. And so he spent a lot of time away from mutants. Now in the past, like our world chronologically, like 25 years, he's been mostly with mutants. But before that, he's, does that factor into how you see him in any way?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's going to be a factor in the book for reasons that'll become obvious in the next couple of months.
And that's why I'm asking, because you kind of, without saying anything, it makes me seem like that would happen.
Yeah, but and the thing is that it also it's a dynamic I understand. Like despite despite the army of people calling me the openly gay writer of fill in the blank book, I'm actually the openly bisexual writer of fill in the blank book. I just don't correct them because I don't give a shit. But the point is that like many of my best friends, in fact, my two best friends are straight. Mm-hmm. And that's for the sole reason of just like, and why is anyone your best friend? It's just happened that way. Right. But to that end, it's something I relate to with Bobby, that he's deep in mutant culture now, and he often has been, but he has interacted with and formed strong bonds with people who are not in his direct community, and that's something that is very germane to my life, and I'm excited about it. I think that aids in his perspective.
That's great. That's fantastic.
I mean, I'm seeing it with you in public all the time, and you're straight.
Yeah, I mean, we do that. I have no problem with that. Let's there was something else I wanted to talk about. You've had a lot of long runs, and we're going to get to more like this is.
Have I guess in the modern context, I remember getting angry that Ostrander and Mandrake's Martian Manhunter only got 36 issues in the 90s.
Well, okay, listen. Yeah, in the modern, absolutely, I will qualify that. In the modern realm of things, yes, they're slightly longer. Is that something you look forward to? Like when you take on a project, for example, when you take on a project, I know it's hard because you're at the whim of somebody else, especially if you're working for one of the big two, essentially. But do you want it? Do you look for telling a long story?
I mean, yes. Like I think everybody would.
I mean, I don't know that everybody. Some people are like, I just want to tell this story, and this is where it goes. I mean, obviously, there's some people. Most people would want to go, have their, Chew or Fables or whatever.
I mean, in a fiscal sense, everybody would want that.
Well, fiscally, yes.
But that being said, I do, with the asterisks of you can't plan for that. Because as I said earlier, especially now, you can't hold anything back. You have to give 100%. And then if you get arc 2, you have to find a way to give 110%. And then if you get arc 3, you have to find a way to give 120.
Do you think that impedes the storytelling?
Absolutely.
You think it hurts a little bit?
Or not impedes, but it changes it. The days of a James Robinson slow burn, James Robinson, Tony Harris, Peter Snagebjerg slow burn Starman run are never coming back.
Right. The Judas contract was 40 issues.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not. I shouldn't say that it impedes storytelling because I mean we'd be pretty bad at our job if that were the case. But it does change how you think about things, and that is, and with that, yeah, in once or twice in my career, it'd be nice to have a slow burn series. Thank you, Sherry.
It's her favorite. It's her favorite thing you've written.
It's my favorite thing I've written too, so that works out. It's a good example though. Like we did know we were going to have 12 there, and thank God, but. So it'd be nice. I mean, I long to have a Chris Claremont style subplot that doesn't resolve for like 80 issues. But I don't think that that's going to happen currently. So it just changes how you think about things. Like, I mean, Scarlet Witch is a good example. I'd put everything. I mean, if it only ran 5 issues, I'd be very happy with where that's left. But that's not to say I don't have more in the tank. I could run Scarlet Witch for 50 issues, especially because I really enjoy Wanda. But I'm not holding something back for issue 49, you know, and I think that has changed in the time that, at least since I was trying to break in, which goes back to the mid 90s.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about something else new.
Oh, hell yeah.
This is coming from Mad Cave, which, you know, they're doing things. I want to hear what your experience with Mad Cave is and what is Exorcists Never Die about.
First of all, love Mad Cave. It's been an amazing place to work, and the stuff that's going to be coming out from them in the future is just going to keep kicking ass, including for me because I have 3 books there that haven't been announced.
I believe it.
So that's not, and I've actually and in different stages of production, and all extremely different, which is very exciting. Like I have Exorcist Never Die, which I'll answer about in a minute. I have a young adult book that hasn't been announced. I have like a what would I call it? Fairy tale grindhouse horror book.
Wait. Fairy tale grindhouse horror.
Yes, well, much like Exorcist Never Die, it's a book that started with a little kernel from the Mad Cave folks, and we developed it in collaboration. So that's all I can say about that book. But I almost took it as a challenge, and the challenge has been extremely exciting because the book is now a joy to write. But the kernel, which you'll see when the book is announced, of doing this horror sort of like fright book, like almost like slasher book, although it's more like a kidnapper book, based around a popular fairy tale. It was kind of like those two things don't go together. Kind of like when Dan DiDio, one of my favorite people, called me and said, "Martian Manhunter meets Marvin the Martian." I was just like, "God damn you!" but I have to take it because you know that I would write Martian Manhunter for $1, but also I'll take my rate. So, and then there's an original coming from them as well. So there's a lot going on, but much like the book that we're talking about, the fairy tale thing, Exorcists Never Die started with a little core idea from the Mad Cave folks, and they asked if I wanted to develop it with them, which I was excited to do. Especially when I found out Sebastian Perez was going to be drawing it because he's fucking incredible.
Yes, absolutely.
And my job with him is to get out of the way and just provide exciting scripts that excite him. And then, again, come back in a month and he's done something incredible. So Exorcists Never Die. The Mad Cave folks had liked my book, The Pull, which if folks haven't read it, me and Ricardo Lopez Ortiz and Trina.
That was at TKO, right?
At TKO, and they loved that the high action. Now that is an apocalyptic sci-fi book, but the action is very anime influenced, and so they wanted to do a fight book, and they wanted it to be about exorcists. And again, you don't want to talk about mandates. That mandate is very broad, and I was excited to build around it. From that, we got Exorcists Never Die, which is a world with combat exorcists, of course, good and evil, light and dark, heaven and hell. However, as usual, there are rules on the mortal plane, but only heaven is following the rules. So even though these powers are not supposed to manifest on the mortal plane, demons do it all the time. But heaven still plays by the rules, so they can't come down and defend us. In their place are the combat exorcists who do what we call God flows, which are like 1 part martial arts kata and 1 part yoga flow. And when they do them, it allows them to channel different angelic powers, very similar to like when you summon someone in Final Fantasy or something like that. So the way that heaven can influence and help us fight is that they lend us their abilities, and they lend these combat exorcists their abilities. So in that, with that world being said, you meet Sid Miller and Ellen Blair. They are two former lovers, but also two of the top combat exorcists in the world. Were brought together to do a raid on the Hell Scraper, which is a hell. Oof, my God, it's late. I'm sorry. Which is a skyscraper going straight down towards hell. And instead of fighting their way up to the top, they have to fight their way down to the bottom, overcoming demons that sum up the 7 deadly sins, so they can reach the bottom and stop a soul auction where thousands and thousands of souls are about to be auctioned off to a different Lord of Hell.
That's incredible. And
They punch
listen, and you've just said this. Go ahead. I'm sorry. What?
They punch things real good, and they do it with angelic powers. I could have said it in one sentence.
Well, listen, I understand you could have, but you just set that book up, and I want to read it. I can't wait to read it. And you haven't told me anything that happens. You just told me what's going to happen or what the point of it is, and that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to that.
And Sebastian's art, I mean, like I said, again, he's
Sure.
crushing it. Like, I mean, to be fair, that's how we invented the God flows. Every time one of the combat exorcists does a God flow, you get a double page or single page splash where they're striking some badass pose, and this angel empowers them. And we're trying to make the angels like less the Metatron from Dogma and more these sort of inconceivable things that you would see in old apocryphal texts, like thousands of eyes and faces that would make mortal hearts explode and all that type of thing.
Sure.
So it's been really, really fun. And I don't know why it's never come up, but I actually love exorcism movies. So it's been because I love going back. I took a class on Faust in college. It was one of my favorite classes.
So a class on Faust.
Yeah.
Just a Faust.
Well, I mean, it's a German literature class, so we read a variety of different versions of Faust.
Okay.
But my favorite was actually the Christopher Marlowe version. Perhaps not obviously, but most folks like the Goethe version, and I do really like Goethe's Faust. But there's elements to the Marlowe that I like a little bit better. And actually, on that weird note, like any version of Faust was viable for analysis in class. So I had us watch the very bad movie adaptation of Tim Midgell's Faust, Love of the Damned comic from the 1990s. It was not the highest regarded version of Faust. Love you, Tim, but it was not the highest regarded version of Faust that we took in during the course of the class. The professor also convinced us that Darren Aronofsky's Pi was a Faust story, which I guess it kind of is, but I think he just wanted to watch that movie in class. Anyway, to that point, I've always enjoyed a lot of the concepts revolving around exorcism stories, and it goes back to Marlowe's Faust for me, where Mephistopheles is menacing Faustus, and he comes upon Faustus's neighbor, who physically is very frail. He's an old man, he's sickly, but his faith is strong. And so for all of Mephisto's power, he goes to menace the man, and he can't touch the man. He can't affect the man. Because of the power of his belief and the power of his faith. And I've always enjoyed that dynamic with exorcism stories, where all you really have to do to confront these infernal powers is be unwavering and have this force of will. Now, I'm not a Christian myself. I have respect for folks who are. But so when I think about that, I say, belief in oneself, a force of will, things that can be applicable to anybody. But I've always sort of liked that narrative that even though like a power can be frightening and intimidating and horrific, if you're strong enough not to waver, then all you have to be is mortal. And I've always enjoyed that about exorcism stories. And that's why I like Exorcists Never Die as well. At the end of the day, these combat exorcists, they just need to be themselves and yes, channel these powers, but they are using mortal means to overcome extra mortal concepts. And to me, that's still a classic exorcism story, even though we're doing like my version of gun kata from Equilibrium.
Okay. I got a nerdy question for you. And this is, you can go anywhere with this. Is there a character that you haven't written that you want to write? It doesn't have to be Marvel DC license could be anywhere, anything, movie, TV, comics, any comics. Is there a character that you're burning to write?
Oh yeah, Highlander.
Highlander.
Yes.
The
And the Inhumans. But you know.
well, I won't. I don't want you to say any more about that, so you can stop right there. But um, Highlander, huh? That's the one you want to write.
I love it. I've pursued it at a variety of companies. So I mean, there's probably other answers, but that's always the top of the list.
That's the top.
It is my golden. Well, I mean, Star Trek is my golden goose license, but I may actually do that someday. Which is not a spoiler. I'm not doing Star Trek right now, but I fucking love Star Trek. So that's up there. I mean, those are the easy answers. Star Trek, Doctor Who, the things that I love. But the things that I love that maybe not everyone does is Highlander. And I have plenty of Highlander ideas in my head. I have a 3-book line for any publisher that gets the license.
Who has the license?
Unknown at the moment. And that's not, I mean, in the literal sense. I'm not confused.
No, that's fine. Speaking of licenses, let's touch base. Our last show, we had Michael and Kelly on talking about the Gold Key thing, and you're part of that, right?
I am.
How now? Are you going to be in all of the issues? Or are you just in this issue? Do you know the first issue?
I am. I've only done one story. Mm-hmm. I presume it's in the first issue because we got
it is.
Story. Yeah. So the answer is yes. I'd gladly come back. Love Michael Conrad. Love Zane Barrow, who edited the book. But we do have, we're in the first issue, and I'm reuniting with my original comics collaborator, Artyom Drokotov, who did Undertow, and also did American Vampire Anthology with me at Vertigo.
That's awesome. Did you? Was that your choice?
Absolutely.
Awesome. I love that. I saw a video or something somebody was saying about people were complaining about James Gunn using his wife in a cameo in the film, and the response is, why wouldn't you hire people that you trust and love and want to work with,
I mean, yeah.
There was a great, actually, I just saw that I saw a video with Orson Welles. Someone asked him, did he hire friends? Did you know that? Are you familiar with that interview?
I'm actually not, but there's no bad Orson Welles interviews. They don't.
No, it's like the 1960s.
They go off the rails. They're always great. So.
Oh yeah, it totally does. It's like, have you ever hired someone, your friends, over someone else? And he said, absolutely. Would you do it again? Absolutely. Was it the right move? Absolutely not. But I would still do it because friendship is more important than whatever you consider art.
What an icon, man.
Yep.
Paul Masson will drink no wine before it's time. But I love his disillusionment at his last role being fucking Unicron, which I actually think is perfect. That his final role is a giant planet-eating being. Also, the story of how Jodorowsky convinced him to be part of Dune before that movie went off the rails?
No.
So he decided, first of all, Bob, if you haven't watched the Jodorowsky's Dune documentary on Amazon, gotta watch it.
Okay, I will have to watch it.
It's buck wild. I'll tell you only 3 things from this, and one will be the Orson Welles thing. The rest I'll leave to you, including I will not say who he had cast as Paul Atreides, but it's fucking buck wild.
Okay, that is pretty much the reason why I want to watch it. So let's go.
Oh, pardon me, not Paul, as Fade Routha, but
okay.
But Paul is actually kind of exactly who you would expect with it being Yoda.
You saw who's Fade in the new one, right?
Yes, and it actually rhymes historically with who was cast as Fade in the version that.
Don't even. Okay, fine. Okay.
But anyway, I rhymes historically, not literally. But the point is,
I understand
the things that Yoda decided about this movie. 1, it was 14 hours long.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
2, I'm building up. So well, also this is a bonus. His production designers were Mobius and H.R. Giger. Perfect. Mobius was on all of the Atreides technology, and Giger was on all of the Harkonnen planet and technology.
This is all that's brilliant.
So this is all real. And then his SFX guy was Dan O'Bannon, that would go on to be a big deal. This is not so these are not the fun factoids. So he decided the only person that could play the Emperor, the only person that could play Harkonnen was Orson Welles. But Orson Welles didn't want to act in the 70s at the time. He just was content to live his life. So Yodo flew to wherever Orson Welles was, I believe it was in France, and found him at his favorite restaurant. Of course, Orson Welles turned him down. And so the solution was that Yodo got the studio to buy out the chef from Orson Welles' favorite restaurant. And he promised Orson Welles that if he did the movie, that chef would cook for him every day during production. And then he agreed. And so then for the Emperor of the Universe, the only person that Yodo could think about could possibly be the Emperor of the Universe was Salvador Dali. And Dali at the time apparently was on the downswing and was very invested in making sure that everybody knew he was Salvador Dali. So if he, of course, first said no, and then he said yes, but only on the condition that he got something crazy for the 1970s, like $3 million a day, that would ensure that he was the highest paid actor in the history of Hollywood.
Sure.
And so Yodo agreed, but then created a setup in the movie where the emperor was terrified about being assassinated and would use body doubles for nearly every interaction in the world. And the result was that Dali would play the emperor, but only have to shoot for like 4 hours or 6 hours, and would technically get his rate
Right.
prorated to the 6 hours or 1 day he was there.
That's fantastic.
Anyway, I don't even know how. Oh, Orson Welles. That's how we got
Orson Welles, of course.
How did we get talking about fucking Salvador Dali?
Listen, it's Pop Culture SquadCast. We're going to go off the rails. Don't worry about it.
But yes, I love a good surly Orson Welles rant.
Yeah, it's great. If I get a chance, I'll send it to you. It's hilarious. It's perfect. All right. Highlander. I like that. I like that answer.
I have a way to Star Trek 09, the Highlander series, and that's my dream book. But that's all I'll say.
Okay. What else? What have I not talked about that you're going to be doing?
I don't know, Bob. You're on the clock, not me.
I know. Well, we're getting to the end of it, so that's why I want to make sure we get everything.
Will, let me look at my desktop.
I mean, I've been looking, and it's significant.
Well, there's Sweet Paprika Red or Black, White, and Pink, which I was actually extremely happy to be in.
Let's talk about that. That's something that's important. Like, so the work that you've done working with the Arancha Studios, how has that been as a relationship for you? And what do you find differently about working with an Italian studio versus American publishers?
They're a lot less uptight about dicks. I'll tell you that.
A lot less about what?
About dicks.
Oh, I thought you said tits.
That would also apply.
You know.
But okay, so I do a lot for Arancha, and so and Mirka and Davide that run it. I mean, honestly, along with Aftershock, like I probably wouldn't be here if I didn't have them as the backbone during the pandemic. So
you want to know?
I love those guys.
This was doing research. So I'm gonna put in the chat for some people to look at. But there's a couple of new posts on Pop Culture Squad about comic books that are coming out this month. Some of which are Steve's. But one of the things that struck me was Mirka has a couple of different books coming out. There were 2 books back to back. And just the way that they described her, it just baffles me. Like up and coming or rising star, and I'm like, she's been here.
Yeah, no, Mirka just came and she's ready to come again. Okay, so that is an absurd statement.
It came out of your mouth.
Oh, not what I said.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so here's this is the problem with American consumption of comics, and it's okay to just consume American comics. There's nothing wrong with that, but it is irresponsible, I think, to not be aware that there are other comics or that there are other areas of things. And when Unnatural happened, I was unaware that it was. It existed before and came to him. It was coming to her, but it was very easy to figure that out. Once you could figure that out, then you're like, oh, this means this person she's huge. Other places, we're just finding out about her. But that, again, Unnatural was 5 years ago, and
oh, I know, I localized it.
And it was sick, but it was 5 or 6 years ago that Hex Wives came out, and she was fantastic on that.
No, I mean the thing is, and Mirka had been in. I mean, Mirka and I worked together because she drew the Killer Frost one shot with me.
Oh, okay.
So she's been around. She's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I mean, I'm not going to rip on the people that said up and coming that much, like whatever. But let's be clear, like there's just some old fashioned sexism at play there. Too. Like a dude can write one comic and suddenly he's the next fucking comics Jesus. But Mirka can be one of the best selling image authors for the past 5 years, which she is. In addition to winning a fucking a Harvey Award for Sweet Paprika. And she's up and coming. I mean, go fuck yourself, to be quite honest. But she has earned it. She's incredibly prolific. She's an amazing artist. She's an amazing writer, and I've been lucky to know them. I mean, I've been localizing her stuff, not from the start, but pretty close. Like I did Unsacred, I did Unnatural, I did Mercy. Obviously, I did Sweet Paprika.
Wait, so you did the localization for Unnatural, and that's
correct.
That's correct. Fantastic. I did not know that. That's terrific.
And it's been a great relationship for me too. That they produced Commanders in Crisis, Studio Rancha. They produced Loaded Bible, Blood of My Blood, and there's going to be more coming as well. So I love those folks, and you might see some more news from me and Rancha soon. I really mean might, because we've had stuff in the works for a long time, but everything you never know. And same goes for Sweet Paprika, Black, White, and Pink. I was super excited to be part of that. I mean, I have every word of Sweet Paprika came from Mirka, and with a light touch reached the page. I mean, I localized everything. So I'm pretty confident in saying that other than her, the creator, I know that world pretty fucking well. And I was excited to step into it, especially for the story we got to tell, because there was not, by virtue of the story of Sweet Paprika, there wasn't a lot of direct queer rep. And I'm here to get things on the page that have never been on the page before, which is what we did.
When does that come out? Is that
I think it came out -1 month ago.
Okay, well, it's all in there, right? Is there just the one? Is it a one shot?
Oh, it's a one shot. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, sorry.
I was just busting your chops a little bit, but yeah, no, it's out, and everybody should hunt it down, and not just because of me. Stepan Sejic is in it.
No, absolutely.
Like it's a gorgeous book, and it's a naughty book, but it's very obvious for people who read Sweet Paprika. That's what it is.
That's fantastic.
I think that Mirka's got an amazing sense of humor. She's got an amazing sense for character, and there's just going to be more and more. And I was very lucky. Like a lot of comics is these weird right place, right time. If I hadn't worked with her on Killer Frost, in a way, I don't know if I'd have a career, if I'd be here right now, because some months during the pandemic working for Rancha got me through. So it is kind of wild when you think back all those 15 years ago, like how we got here. And they're great. And it's just been, and they're also been a launch pad for a lot of books. I mean, I did Commanders in Crisis with, holy shit, I forgot his name. Davide, but everybody's named Davide.
Tinto.
Davide Tinto. I'm so sorry to the world. I've been working all day, and everybody's named Davide. There are no less than 3 Davides in Studio Rancha.
That's why you just say Davide, and it's okay.
But I mean, now he's crushing it at Marvel, and I'm incredibly proud.
He is. I saw that.
My stuff. I mean, Andrea Ricardo and I worked together. Well, again, he did Deep Beyond at Rancha, which I also localized. And now, yes, he worked with me in Marauders, but now he's doing the Alien book with Declan Shalvey. Rancha's been an amazing launchpad for a lot of people, and I'm happy to just be clinging to the outside of the ship.
Well, that's great. That's great, and it's important. It's important that there are those types of crushes and launch pads for people. It's good that when good people find good people, that they support them. And it's one of the things about this industry that, for the most part, not all the time, not always, it goes in waves. I think I've found historically that people support, creators support each other for the most part.
Yeah, usually, unless we both want the same character, and then the knives are out and you can't turn.
Well, listen, I said for the most part, and we're not talking about the person you're talking about.
There wasn't any specific.
It's all right. It's all right.
I would go to England to kill Al Ewing if he got blackballed before me, so that's fine.
All right. What else? We're running out of time here. We're running out of cool stuff, and I want to thank you for stepping in and doing the full show with me tonight. I'm super excited about everything you're doing. I'm super excited about this path you're on, and I can't wait to do this again sometime soon. And there'll be like probably 8 other things that I have to pull out and like, hey, he's doing this, he's doing this.
Oh man, well there'll be a couple, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
And you'll be able to talk about my long awaited by very few people return to DC with the Donna Troy one shot I'm doing. So, and that just got announced. But talk about a killer team too, like Kat on the interiors and working with Nicola. I mean, having Nicola Scott on covers, like there's probably
Wait, who on the interior? I didn't see the announcement. So who's on the interiors?
It's Kath Lobo is doing my interiors.
Okay.
And she is gonna fucking crush it. She's been doing a lot of there's some Wonder Woman illos and stuff, but a lot of like Power Ranger shit like that too. She's gonna do great. As I said, Nicola's doing all the covers for those, and I just got to tell a great Donna Troy story. Like it's actually really, you want to talk about having an easy mandate. Like all the hard stuff that's Tom Taylor. I just have to tell a kick-ass Donna Troy story, and without blowing myself too much, I know how to do that. So I'm pretty excited for it.
When at one point about a month or two ago, Nicola posted something she was doing Donna, and she's like, one of her favorite things about doing this book is getting to draw Donna. And I said, I'm excited about everything about this book, and I think that I'm most excited about you drawing Donna because it is. Someone said something today. I think I saw where like who are your 4 biggest superheroes, and I don't think I can say that without. I can't say my first 4 without including Donna. Like I'm a total Titans nerd. You know that.
I do. Well, I'm excited for it. I will say I've long campaigned for her black costume to get palette swapped into a dark red costume because I like her more in red than black. But I like the costume. I lose that battle all the time. But I really like where we set her up in the book. And this is more like we will grace over her origin, but we're keeping that pretty like All-Star Superman simple because a lot of that is for the main book as well. What you will do is know exactly where Donna fits in, especially relative to what's going on in Tom King's Wonder Woman. You'll know exactly where she fits in, exactly how she works versus how Diana works, and things like that. And I think it's a celebration of her and her point of view. In the pitch, I think one of the first lines in the pitch, I say the whole world's on fire, but Donna Troy is making sure no one's stuck in the building.
Yeah, that's right.
Like she, I think there's a humanistic side to her that is very unique.
A lot of times I think people get lost in trying to understand her and making it too difficult. I think Donna Troy is very simple. She is exactly that. She just wants to help and make sure nobody dies and make sure that that justice is happening. Like that's from the very beginning, from Showcase, from Brave and the Bold, through the Titans, through Marv's Titans, through all of that. It's always been about Donna just wanting to help people and save lives.
And I think in a way, like as well, like she's more like us, like she has Amazon training, but between her and Diana, I would argue you want to piss Donna off less.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Ask Dick that.
You what?
I said, ask Dick that. She put him through a mirror.
Yeah, well, and that's not to say that she's like full Artemis going to kill you, but
no,
she's going to remember. I feel like there's times Diana like lets a villain off, but like forgives a villain or forgives someone, and then they go home to like open the fridge, and when they close the door, Donna's there being like, "Oh, you thought that we were done?" Like,
that's awesome.
She lets you off, not me. But that's also a little more human reaction. Like sometimes we want a little catharsis. We want a little recompense and to balance the scales. I think she is more like us. And I'm very excited. I'm very excited for that one shot. It's very nice to be back at DC, but it's been great being at Marvel. So I've got no complaints.
I'm so happy for you.
I think it's hilarious that, it's not like, I wasn't sure we were ever coming back. So there's a reason I was like, oh, we're going to get we're going to make the Amazons interesting and messier, and it's going to be in Scarlet Witch, because who knows if I'll ever be. But they're very, very different. And I'm extremely proud, like I would say as well, like I'm extremely proud of what we have with the Bacchae and Scythia and Scarlet Witch to bring it back around, because they are different. And that's still inspired by great. I mean, that story is inspired by how much I love the Greg Rucka, J.G. Jones, Hikatea. It's not
yep,
the same,
very much.
It's not the same, but Scythia she's caught in a way that I think is really compelling. I mean, my dream Wonder Woman 3, by the way, like the poster was just going to be Gull's Wonder Woman standing on Batfleck's head. I mean, that's the perfect movie to me, actually, in many ways. Because how do you better delineate who Diana is versus who her peers are? And that's how. She's loyal to someone, even if that own person doesn't think they deserve it. And that's not what's going on with Scythia, but it's similar. She's a prisoner of duty. She's avenging people who she doesn't even like or think are honorable, right. But she has to do it. And of course, that's the type of thing that Scarlet Witch and Wanda would gladly call into question in about 5 hours when that issue goes up for digital.
All right, I think you've wasted me here. It's fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
And we're gonna do it again soon. We'll get you back with Mike. Where can people find you this year? I know you're dialing back in terms of conventions. Where are you going to be at in case people are going to be out there?
I gotta think. Okay, so my first con is Springfield, Mass, mid-July, and then I'm in Raleigh end of July, and then I'll be at Boston Con because I live here in August. I will then be in Austin Galaxy Con early September, mid-September, Miami Super Fan Con.
Mm-hmm.
October, New York Comic Con, and in December, I'll close out the year at Columbus Galaxy Con, which may or may not have some surprise guests appearing at the show with me as well that are unannounced. Surprise guests that I am personal friends with, I guess I should say.
Yeah, well, we're going to try and meet that. We're going to try and do that one, and I'll see you in New York and possibly somewhere else along the way.
Oh yeah.
But and I have to get more tattoos, so I'll be up there.
I got new restaurants, man.
All right, good.
I got a lot of new restaurants. We'll talk about those when we're not recording. But
yeah, exactly. Sherry wants to know if you're coming to Baltimore, and I know that with you, that's always a last minute thing. So
you said it. I have been a no on Baltimore the past 2 years, and then about 2 weeks before the show, they say you're going to Baltimore, and I say okay. So the answer is, if I played the odds, probably.
Yeah. Excellent. Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. And we'll see you around the road. And there's a whole bunch of comic books to go buy this month from Steve Orlando.
Yes, please do.
All right. Thanks. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Thanks to Steve for doing this. I want to remind you all that Saturday is New Comic Book Day or Free Comic Book Day. And please, visit your local store and buy something and have a lot of fun. All right. We'll see you later.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?